Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am WaveTheory, and today is going to be a little bit different. I am going to review WaveTheory. Me. Okay? Why? Well, we're nearing the end of calendar year 2022 as I film this video, and for context, I filmed this on December 19th of 2022. And I had a very interesting conversation with a person in the audio industry about the nature of reviewing and that sort of thing. And something that this person said got me thinking about the general need for honesty and transparency and all of that within reviewing. And after approximately 15 months, just a little bit more than 15 months of the life of this channel, and it being the end of a year, I figured it was a good opportunity to just kind of look back at the channel itself, revisit what my hearing quirks might be, like what has been confirmed about them, what may have changed, because I have a video about that. When I launched this channel back in September of 2021, I included a little intro video that talked about what I understood to be the way I listen to and like how I hear stuff right from the beginning. Now, turns out that is one of my least viewed videos out there, but it's probably worthwhile to just dive back into that quickly. And then also just kind of give an update about, like, after doing this now for over a year, at least on the YouTube side of things, has my philosophy of reviewing changed at all? So we'll go ahead and we'll jump into shameless self-promotion here real quick, and then we'll come back on the other side of that, and I will talk about how the channel is going, what I understand my hearing quirks to be now, and revisit my reviewing philosophy a little bit, so that hopefully all of those things can kind of help you gain a little bit more context about who I am, why I'm doing this, and maybe why I say and do some of the things I say and do on this channel. All right. Let's do the commercial. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Please remember to hit that like button, and if you haven't, please subscribe. Also, I have a Patreon set up so that you can help support me on a monthly basis, and I've set up a PayPal donation so that you can help me out in that way too if a monthly subscription does not make sense for you. Links for all of that, including the benefits, in the description below. Please check those out. All right, on with the show. The first thing I want to address here quickly is often when a reviewer makes a video that is not a review of a piece of gear or a comparison video or like something specifically audio related, people start commenting like, uh-oh, they must be out of gear to review. I assure you that is not the case. I've got a ton of stuff that's going to take me well into the new year on reviewing, but again, I think it is important to revisit some of these, and I maybe might make this a habit, depending on how well received it is, to at least like at the end of every year, provided that I have the privilege to keep doing this for a while, just kind of look back and see how things are doing, what's changing, and all of that. So anyway, let's dive in. First of all, let's talk about the channel itself, my Reviews by WaveTheory channel, and how it's going. So again, this channel, the YouTube part of it, launched on September 9th of 2021. So that's been a little over 15 months now since that happened. And we are over 3,300 subscribers and over 368,000 total views at this point. I don't know how fast audio channels are supposed to grow, particularly ones like mine, where I've had the good fortune of launching with a large proportion of high-end content. So I don't really have a sense of whether that's good or bad relative to the nature of audio reviewing, but I feel pretty good about it anyway. Okay? If you're curious, because I was curious too, and I thought I would just pass this along, these are my top 10 most viewed videos of all time so far. Of all time meaning, 15 months, right? So here they are, just real quick. 10. Sennheiser HD600. 9. Cord Cutest. These are reviews. Most of these are reviews. 8. Hi-Fi Men Ananda Stealth Magnet Edition. 7. iFi Zen Streamer. 6, Hi-Fi-Man Edition XS. 5, the Gishelli Labs J2 DAC. 4, Hi-Fi-Man EF400 DAC amp. 3, the Audiophile LCD-X 2021 open back version. 2, the Schiit Bifrost 2/64 DAC. And then my most watched video is my State of the Market, the $1,200 to $1,800 open back headphone comparisons. And I'll put links to all of those in the description down below if you want to check them out. That's just strictly throwing that out there just because I think it's interesting information. And some of these I couldn't have predicted. And then there are others that didn't crack the top 10 that have surprised me by how well they're doing. Like, for example, I actually have them right here because I use them to kind of help monitor my recording here at times. But like the Koss Porta Pro with the Yaxi pads is way up into the thousands of views as well at this point. And like sometimes these things are just hard to predict. Anyway, that was the top 10. Let's dive into hearing quirks. So when I launched this channel, I was aware that I tend to like a little bit more bass presence, particularly in the sub bass, than maybe the stereotypical audiophile does. And I also knew that I was very sensitive to and have a very low tolerance for shoutiness. Okay, I have a YouTube Shorts series where I define a lot of these terms, and shout or shoutiness is one of them. But just really quickly, to me, shoutiness, like it usually happens for one of a couple of different reasons. One, the 1 kilohertz range, which for a lot of human voices is pretty close to the fundamental frequency of the ow sound. Okay, the ow part of shout. Okay, it's in there. So if there's a peak at 1 kilohertz compared to its harmonic frequencies or the stuff around it, then that ow kind of sound can come forward a lot more than that. Or if 1 kilohertz is okay, but then there is a peak up at 2 kilohertz and or 3 kilohertz, okay, that is like higher than even the ear gain region adjustment is. Those harmonics, the first harmonic of 1 kilohertz being 2 kilohertz and the second being 3 kilohertz. Like if either of those are too far forward compared to the fundamental, then it can emphasize that same kind of ow sound to it too and really push that forward. And to me, that makes vocals, which kind of gives everything like this filter of ow to it. Okay, honk is similar. It's just a little bit lower. It's more of an aw than an ow that is emphasized, but it's the same kind of idea. And I don't like either of those. Okay, that really hasn't changed. And over my reviewing here, you've probably heard me complain about shoutiness in headphones quite a bit. And my overall impression of a headphone is often very closely connected to how I perceive the level of shoutiness in it. There are some brands that kind of pretty consistently tickle that shoutiness, even though they can make really good headphones otherwise. Like, for example, Audiophile and Abyss are two companies that do this for me. They just are very often, not always, but are often very shouty to my ear. And so I struggle with them at times. But then other brands like Hi-Fi-Man, Sennheiser, Beyerdynamic, just to name a few, like they tend to rein that region in a little bit better. And so I like their presentations a little bit more overall because of that. Okay, so that really hasn't changed. Now, back to the bass thing for a moment, about the elevated sub bass. I still do sometimes have a guilty pleasure of enjoying a really forward, thick, heavy, deep sub bass. Mostly in the sub bass. I don't really, like, if you push the mid bass too far forward, things can get muddy and sloppy and all of that. I don't really like that. But way down in the sub bass. So we're talking like 60 hertz and lower to my ear on that a lot. Like if there's a fair amount of rumble and energy down there, particularly if they can do it with speed, that's a lot of fun and I like that a lot. Now, I have learned that I don't necessarily need it. I thought when I launched this channel that like I had to have an elevated sub bass to truly enjoy a thing, and that has changed a little bit, right? Again, I still like it, and if I can have it without it messing up the rest of the presentation, I will take it. Okay, But things that have a more linear extension or a more neutral bass extension all the way down there, I have learned to love too, particularly if they can bring a lot of physicality to the sound, like slam and or punch, that sort of thing, if there's a lot of nice bass texturing and bass detail and pitch definition and all of that. So quality of bass has become more important to me than quantity of bass, but if I can have both, I'll take it. Okay, so I just throw that out there on that. Now, let's talk about treble for a moment. I do like some air, meaning some really high upper frequencies, upper treble kinds of things. I don't need a ton of it, and it definitely can be overdone and get fatiguing, but I do like a little bit more air on things. It just makes things feel a little bit claustrophobic if you don't have it. Okay, so a little bit more air just makes it feel a little bit more open, which to me makes it feel a little bit more natural and not closed in at times. So that would be a thing that I've kind of learned here, because I've heard some really, really good sounding headphones lately that didn't have as much air, and they could feel just a little bit closed in at times, which I didn't like very much. So I offer that out there too. Now, in general, I want vocals and acoustic instruments to sound as close to the real thing as possible. So I, like most humans, have ears, okay? And I use them pretty much all the time. And so, and just going through life, which is, you know, getting close to 40 years for me now, and that sort of thing. And I've had the privilege of being around a ton of acoustic instruments in my life, like lots of pianos, acoustic guitars, various horns, trumpets, drums, you know, and so forth, like a lot, okay? Hundreds, if not, you know, well, not hundreds, thousands of hours of exposure to those things. I don't really play myself, but I have been involved in the reproduction of those kinds of things with, you know, running soundboards and setting up microphones and all of that for basically since I was 10 years old. Okay, and so that has given me a sense of of what instruments are supposed to sound like, balancing out levels and all of that. So I have a lot of experience doing that, and again, my ears were there with me and were vital tools during that, and so I learned a lot of things about what I think things are supposed to sound like. And then also, like, I am a human with a voice, right? And again, as most of us have, okay? And we use our voices to communicate with each other in real life frequently. I say that to say that pretty much if you are alive and human and you have a working, they don't even have to be exquisitely working, just a functional pair of ears, you are qualified to make judgments about how well reproduced vocal sounds are. Now, I make that point here to say that I want my voices and acoustic instruments in particular in my audio gear to sound as much like I understand them to sound in real life as possible. Yes, because of the way brains work and because of the way ears are made, so to speak, we all have a little bit different outer ear shape and a little bit different in ear canal dimensions and geometries and such, which changes some things. And then we all have very different life experiences, which makes different parts of different sounds more salient to us than others, meaning we latch onto those aspects more than we latch onto other aspects. That's true of us all, okay? So that's why I say, as I understand real to sound, but please make those vocals and acoustic instruments sound as close to how I hear them in real life as possible. Like, that's my standard. When I think of high fidelity, I think it goes beyond fidelity to a signal. I think it's more important than that. It's fidelity to our own experience and how we hear and experience sounds in the real world. So that is going to continue to be my standard. Now, with synthetic sounds, okay, or intentionally distorted sounds, like distorted electric guitars. I mean, I'm a big fan of hard rock, heavy metal, right? Lots of distorted electric guitars in particular in that, okay? Electronic music like EDM, dubstep, okay? Those kinds of things. Like, you can make a case for what is the natural sound there to begin with. And that's a fair question. But that's why I said vocals and acoustic instruments a moment ago. Because I think if your gear can get vocals and acoustic instruments pretty close to right, it's going to do a very fine job of giving you some insight, at least, into what an artist may have intended. Got to be careful with that phrase, okay? But if it gets voices and acoustic instruments right, I trust it to get distorted electric guitars right, okay? Synthesized sounds right, okay? Etc. All right, so that's kind of just a quick recap of how I hear things, what I'm listening for on things of that, and so forth. So I hope that is helpful, and I hope more people see this than saw that at the beginning of the channel way back, which I will still link to. You are welcome to compare the two. All right, so then let's talk for a moment about my reviewing philosophy. This audiophile hobby that we have is a journey, right? It very rarely is it ever about the destination. In fact, I don't know that most of us have a static destination, and so it continues to be about the journey, about the chase. We are constantly learning about what different gear does and why, and hearing for ourselves what different approaches to building gear makes, and how that influences and affects the sound that we hear, and then comparing that sound to whatever our chosen reference is. And, you know, it's kind of a moving target. And what you may think is your end game now is probably going to be different by the time you actually think you have obtained it. Okay? So, you know, I think we need to keep all of that in mind. That said, my number one goal here is I try as best I can to be honest about what I'm hearing and where I think the value lies. Like, as best I can, I try to call balls and strikes in terms of like what are the strengths and weaknesses of any piece of gear. And then I personally think it is important to compare any given piece of gear to similarly priced competitors, so that we can answer or at least get some insight into a value question. Answering value questions is tough because, again, we all hear differently enough and value things differently enough that what I find valuable may be very different than what you do, and that's okay. And that's expected. But in some sense, I think the market also helps us determine value, right? Is the level of resolution appropriate for the price point? Okay, resolution, detail retrieval, those kinds of things. Is, you know, how close to a real human voice is this thing able to reproduce in comparison to things of a similar or equal price? Okay, I think those are important things to consider, and it's at least a good starting point for talking about the value question on a piece. So, I mean, that's what I think I have done, and that's what I pledge to continue to do, is to be as honest as I can about the strengths and weaknesses of each piece, how it compares to similarly priced competitors, and then use all of that to try to synthesize like what is kind of a baseline value for the market in general for this product. Okay, and I will continue, if it's valuable to all of you, to say like, would I spend my money on this given what I know about the competition or not? And I'm going to try to do all of that while avoiding fueling up hype trains, because I don't like doing that. I don't think that I have not intentionally fueled up a hype train. I have liked some gear a lot, which probably has increased the excitement level of it in general or some sort. So, I mean, fueling up a hype train is bound to happen if something comes out that's new and exciting and then it's actually good. Like, that has happened, probably will continue to happen. but I'm certainly not going to try to fuel one up that's not justified, okay? At the same time, I think that I have pretty successfully and will continue to do my best to avoid just trashing a thing. Again, try to call balls and strikes about strengths and weaknesses, but not sit there and, just rip a piece down or question the motives of the makers or anything like that. Sometimes things just don't turn out the way we had hoped. And, I think there is value in saying that. So I'm going to try to continue to do that as honest as a way as possible without ever being mean-spirited or anything like that. And I'm going to do all of that because I still believe that my first responsibility in doing this work is to you, the viewers, right? Like, you are the reason for this channel, right? Informing you and all of that as best I can. That's why I do this. So you are my first responsibility and will continue to be. All right. Now, as far as other things like the use of affiliate links, I know that there are wide-ranging opinions about use of affiliate links. Some people are completely okay with it. Some people think that using affiliate links inherently compromises the integrity of the reviewer because their responsibility is going to, or they're going to be prone to leaning towards propping up the things that are affiliate links for them and not the other things. And I get that. I have used affiliate links and I will continue to do so. Mostly from Apos Audio so far, who I give a lot of credit to because I have not talked up a lot of the gear that they have sent me. In fact, I've done quite the opposite, but they have done a great job of giving me the space to be honest about the stuff that they send me. And they keep sending me stuff, so I really appreciate their working with me on that. That is very cool of them. Okay, on that one. So shout them out in the comments or something and say you appreciate that they've been doing that too. Now, here's the thing. After 15 months of doing this, I can tell you that this is work, right? It is work. I put a lot of hours into this, into the listening, into the filming, into editing, all of that kind of thing. And also, I put a lot of thought into it. Like when I try to stay fit and healthy as best I can. And so like I lift weights a couple times a week and I swim laps a couple times a week. And I cannot tell you the number of times I have been in the pool and I am approaching the wall at one end of the pool and I have been thinking about how I'm going to capture the essence of a piece of gear in words for all of you, and I completely lose count of what lap I'm on in the pool, and I have to think for a minute where I am and try not to shortchange my workout on that. Like it happens so often, right? And I say all of that to talk about, just to say that this is work. So on the subject of affiliate links and that sort of thing, like I think it is completely fair for we reviewers to be compensated for our efforts. Of course I'm biased on that, right? But I think getting paid to do a particular work or a particular job does not inherently compromise one's ability to do that job. If it did, no one could work, right? So, yeah. So here's the thing I'm also going to ask of you, the audience in here, is like, if you really think that I am biasing myself towards things just for my own financial gain rather than just being truthful, tell me, okay? Maybe you'll be right, maybe you won't, okay? But it is a thing, I mean, it is a trap that I don't want to fall into, while at the same time recognizing that it is fair to be compensated for the number of hours me or anyone like me puts into this, okay? So I'm going to throw that out there and just use that as a reason why I don't think there is an inherent problem with affiliate links. They can be a trap. I'm going to do my best for them not to be. You guys are free to help keep me honest about that too. All right. As far as gear sourcing, like where am I getting stuff to review from? I'm kind of an all of the above approach on that because I have sourced review units from private individuals on private loans. So you'll hear me mention friend of the channel or something like that, a number of reviews, and that has been hugely helpful. And I mentioned having a large proportion of high-end content so far in this channel, and I think in a lot of ways that has happened because private individuals have said, here's this high-end thing I will loan you, which has been really cool and has been a true privilege that they would care enough and trust me enough to do that. But that did kind of shape the nature of this channel at the same time. And I don't want to be just a high-end person. I definitely enjoy the high-end part of it and will continue to do that, but I kind of want to capture the entirety of the market as best I can for audiophiles at every level. But anyway, continuing on. So getting individual loans from individual people. And I think it's important to do that for a couple of reasons. One, it does reduce the risk, which again doesn't always happen, but it does reduce the risk of intentionally or not leaning into just those things that go for, that lead to financial gain for the reviewer. There's that. Also, it is a quality control mechanism for the industry. And what I mean by that is, if you're a manufacturer of audio gear, you need to be aware in this reality that we live in here in the third decade of the 21st century, that any piece of gear that you sell might be loaned to me or someone like me, and then talked about on camera and broadcast to the world through the internet, through the self-publication platform that is YouTube or Headfi or whatever. Like that could happen to any piece of gear that you sell. If I'm a manufacturer, I find that a little bit terrifying, honestly, because if you don't know that I or someone like me has it, you don't know what I or someone like me is going to say about it. On the other hand, I think that ultimately, as scary as it is for manufacturers, is probably good for the industry because that keeps manufacturing standards high. I mean, basically, that means you've got to do your best to not miss, right? You've got to do your best to not miss. And yeah, that's terrifying and adds a lot of work, but I think it's good for everyone in the long run. So I will continue to use the approach of individual loans from individual people to the extent that I can. On the other hand, I think it's also beneficial for me and people like me to develop relationships with individual manufacturers and retailers, which I have done both of and will continue to do. And I mean, for one thing, that speeds up the process of getting gear in here and getting information about it out to you, the listener or viewer, right? It kind of cuts out a middleman, so to speak, there. And also, like, it's when I establish relationships with those kinds of people, particularly manufacturers, if there is something weird about the unit, I can ask them about it, right? I'm not coming in cold and with no established relationship. Like, there's someone who I can talk to. I have a name. I'm working, developing a relationship with a person, and I can ask them about, like, why did you choose to design this thing this way? Why didn't you? Like, all of that. And yes, there are pitfalls that come with that too, but there are also advantages to that because there is some good information that often comes from those conversations to pass on to the viewer. So I say all of that to say that my gear sourcing methods are going to remain all of the above. There are pros and cons to every approach, but I think the pros for each one outweigh the cons in most areas, and so I will continue to be doing all of those going forward. My closing thought here is I want to remind everyone, as much as I appreciate the views and the likes and the comments and all of that, which please continue to do all of those things, okay? Don't listen to just me. There are a lot of voices out there reviewing audio gear. Okay, and there are, I mean, I'm working with a good number of them who I think are really good, honest people who I don't always agree with, but they are good, honest people giving you genuine impressions of how they hear things, and I think there's a lot of value in that. And that, of course, is not limited to just those who I have done collaborations with, because I just haven't gotten to all of them that are out there who are valuable sources. So that's just a reminder. Don't take just my word for a thing, okay? Certainly, please continue to listen, like, subscribe, comment, all of those kinds of things. But don't listen to just me, please. Take other voices into account as well. All right, that's probably enough of my ramblings on this topic. I hope that you find this helpful and useful. This will be dropping soon, probably just before Christmas. Here. So I'm going to say, also going to wish all of you a happy holidays and enjoy celebrating in whatever way that you celebrate. And have a happy new year. And trust me when I say there is going to be a huge string of gear reviews still coming up. So stay tuned for that. So I'm WaveTheory. Thanks for watching. And as always, enjoy the music.